get much bigger. And then when you want to get lean, all it takes is 8 to 16 weeks and voila, you're there. But guys try to hold on to that shit all the time. And it's something you can't really have.
I can't help but say, voila. I'm here with a special guest, Mike Israetel. He has a PhD in sports physiology. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, I got it right. Did I say your name right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Usually I mess it up, and we're honored to have you today. We're going to be talking about a ton of points. We're going to try to keep it simple so you can understand. The goal is try to educate. Many of you know we've had some controversy in the past. Maybe we've gone back and forth, but we're here together to try to talk about the same topics and give you our opinions on what's right. We might not agree on everything. We might disagree. Who knows? But we're going to try to educate, okay? So anything to add before we start?
Thanks for having me on, Greg. It's an honor.
Awesome. And it's my first interview. So he's my first guest. Shocking, I know, but it's true. So let's get into the first question. And it's about bulking and cutting versus main gaining. And just so that people, they get an idea of what main gaining, it's basically to stay at the same body fat percentage and just slowly build up muscle over time versus to bulk and cut where you would gain some weight and then lose the weight later and repeat. So we're going to talk what is better, or is there certain times one is better than the other, and just get right into it. So what do you think about that?
Great question. So I think for a lot of folks, main gaining, or as I've heard it called, gaintaining, I suppose it's all the same, is a really good approach, especially when they start lifting and start eating like in an attempt to gain muscle, because a lot of people will kind of start lifting and they'll be like, oh, I need to get jacked. I need Supermass 5000. And they gain like 40 pounds in 3 months. And they're like, oh, I think I got fatter, and they got a lot fatter. And then they have to diet it off, and it's really demotivating, and they look like crap and they feel like crap. So I think for a lot of folks that start off what you could call like just regular or even like skinny fat, where you're like maybe like 160 pounds, but you don't really have abs and people can't really tell you lift weights. When you start training, just start eating well, like nutritious foods, plenty of protein, 4 or 5 meals a day. Start training pretty hard, like not psychotically, but harder than last time. Like you keep training harder and harder over time. And then you don't even have to really watch your calories. Your body is automatically going to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, probably for like 6 months, if not longer, like a year. Now, after that year, you might be in a position where you're much more muscular, much leaner, and then you have some choices to make. You can continue to sort of gaintain, and that will give you pretty good results. But if you want to get much leaner, you probably have to do a caloric deficit. And then maybe you're 160, a little bit jacked, a little bit lean. You go down to like 150, and then you're like pretty shredded. You're like, holy crap, this is sweet. Then once you're a little leaner or a lot leaner, can you continue to gain muscle at that body fat percent? Yes. Is it optimal? Maybe, unless you want to be a lot bigger. So for example, if you're 150 pounds with pretty clear abs, how do you get to 180 with clear abs? You probably can't gaintain your way to that. The most efficient way is going to have to be bulking and cutting, but that doesn't mean super crazy psycho bulking where you eat like 5 cookies an hour and get super fat. It means just generating like a small surplus, 250 extra calories a day, maybe to 500, gaining like half a pound to a pound a week at most. You do it slowly over 16 weeks. And then you're going to have some body fat, plenty of muscle. You do a little bit of a maintenance phase just to kind of get some sort of wind in your sails, because hard training for 16 weeks really beats you up. Then you do like maybe a mini cut or like a 4 to 8 week fat loss phase, get rid of that extra fat, and you go into a slow bulk again. So I'm a real big fan of, if you want to get much bigger, slow bulking is a real good idea. So we got like dirty psycho bulking. We got gaintaining or main gaining. For beginners, I think gaintaining and gaining is a real great thing. For people that want to get much bigger, something right here is a real good idea. Slow, steady, 250 to 500 calorie surplus, nice and easy. You will gain some extra fat, but I think that does make sense with bringing on some extra muscle. And I think it's the only real reliable way to get much bigger. So if you're looking at like Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, Greg Doucette back when he was competing on stage, you don't get that big unless you kind of put some food down. And the last thing I'll say is a lot of it really depends on your natural hunger levels. So like some guys, when they train and eat, like, especially if they're training hard, they just get hungry, man. And then they just naturally gain weight slowly without really putting on body fat. Or even if they do put on all the body fat, they keep gaining weight. So 160, 165, 170, 75. And that's awesome. But some guys, and I'm sure you have experience coaching folks like this or just knowing who they are, is they'll train and eat. But if you tell them, hey, just like eat whatever, eat healthy, eat well, they just don't gain any weight. And if you don't gain weight, there's no way for you to gain a ton of muscle over time. Like a big 160 is still 160. If you want to be 180, you just don't have the appetite for it. You're going to have to do a purposeful mass phase or muscle gain phase or a bulk where you eat a bit more than you want. Not a ton more, but a bit more. And that way you sort of get the best of both worlds. I don't like to see folks stuck in this idea that, oh, I'll just maintain my way to being 200 and lean, and they only have the appetite to be 160. You're going to have to push some food in. Like, Jay Cutler's been interviewed before, and they're like, what's your favorite cheat meal? And he's like, skipping a meal would be amazing. And they're like, what? And he's like, that's how much I hate eating. That's how much I have to force myself. You don't get Jay Cutler big in most cases unless you push Jay Cutler levels of food. And that's just not for everyone. If you want to get bigger, sometimes you got to eat more than you want.
So I think it's interesting to talk about what point should you be eating that much more food? Like, should we be force feeding at any point? So for example, it sounded like you said when you're leaner that maybe bulking a bit makes more sense. However, let's take a typical guy. Well, maybe not typical. Let's take they're slightly overweight. They've been training for 5 years. They're about 25% body fat. They're not really at a healthy weight. I'm saying 15% would be healthy. Let's say 25, 30%. Should that person, if they're looking to pack on that serious amount of muscle, should they then force feed on top and get even bigger? Or should they actually lose weight? Like, when is main gaining appropriate? And should they cut? Like, they want to get bigger. They're 25%, because I have a lot of clients who hire me. They're overweight and they want to put on more muscle. Would you actually suggest that maybe they should just keep eating, or would it be better to lose weight? Like, what would you say to that?
Keep eating, start sumo wrestling. You'll be amazing at it. Just get super fat. No, on a serious note, great point. And that's a lot of folks that come into training. And of course, they come in reading bodybuilding magazines and following people on Insta. And what do they say? They're like, I got to eat big to get big. And you kind of say in the back of your mind, like, you already are kind of big, except the wrong kind of big. So I think for folks like that, a conversation with them is a good idea, of just telling them how real world shit works. Yeah, but look, like, we can absolutely overfeed you and you will gain muscle and you'll gain even more fat. And then I'll say, well, like, what will that look like? Well, look worse than now. And then I say, well, I don't really want that. I want to look better. Most people, most males, for example, they don't want to be 25%. That's not some shit you want to walk around at. That's like when you have to explain to people that you lift weights. You go to a party and they're like, what do you do for a hobby? And you're like, clearly I lift. And they're like, you could have fooled me. I just thought you were a regular fat dude. And you're like, damn it. So a lot of people want to be in that kind of 15-ish% body fat range before they think about gaining above that. So what I would say is, in most cases, not all, if I get a client that's 25% fat and sort of been training for a while, but not too seriously, my first goal is, of course, talk to them, confirm that they want this, and then take them down to like 15-ish% fat. See how they look, see how they feel. They'll probably gain a little bit of muscle on the way down if they're not super well trained. And then they're 15% fat. They're feeling their swag. They're looking pretty good. And then you say, listen, we can sort of main gain for a while and see how the results are. If you're not gaining muscle fast enough, we can sort of bulk you up slowly but steadily over to about 20% fat. When you get to 20, we'll cut back to 12, see how you feel, and then stay in the 12 to 15% range and kind of slowly over time gain. I don't like pushing people to gain when they're already pretty fat, because, physiologically it probably works. You probably add some muscle. That's not great for your health. And you can like develop like more skin cells and you get loose skin after that. Like, if you bulk to 30%, I've done that before. I still have like some titties and shit that just don't go away under any circumstance. It sucks. And also, like, we kind of all lift to look jacked. And if you're just kind of, for lack of a better term, a fat piece of shit, nobody can tell any better. That's not something most people want to do. It's like, hey, like, you can get really huge if you have like a terrible pounding headache every day. Most people would be like, wait, every day? Fuck that. I don't want to get big. So if you have to be a fat piece of shit every day for 6 months to get really big, most people don't want that. I think it's better to get most people a little bit leaner first and then slowly work their way to whatever they like.
Yeah, I think we actually agree a lot more than I would have suspected, because I'm a fan of, if you're at like, say, 25%, I would slowly over time, like over a long period of time, get down to that healthy weight, that 15%, for example, and then try to build muscle from there. And if they're not building muscle from there, I'd question, well, is 15% too lean for their cell? Like, everyone to me has a certain body fat percentage that they're ideally going to grow at. And so if 15% isn't working, maybe you go up to 16, 17, 18%. And then are you growing from there? Problem I've seen is people are trying to maintain at too lean of a body weight. Seems everyone wants to hire me. They want to be single digit body fat. I want to be 8% fat and then maintain. Coach Greg said I could do it. And they're starving. They have they're starving, no energy, no sex drive. They're not sleeping. And I'm like, you're not eating enough. And it's like, well, you say to be lean. I'm like, no, I say to be at an appropriate weight that you can train hard and feel good. So would you agree with that? Does that make sense?
Oh, a ton of sense. I get a similar thing where it doesn't matter what you tell people as far as recommendations that you're trying to be realistic with. Some fraction of the people that listen to you will try to push them in the direction that they want them to be, away from the reality. You're like, hey guys, like right around 15%, anything above 10% is really good for most people to gain muscle. And like immediately 5 people will be like, so like, can I gain at 7%? Like, motherfucker, I did not say 7%. And I know you want to be a YouTube celebrity and you want to be lean 100% of the time and also get jacked and also just get like mad pussy every day. But you're going to have to work for some of that shit. And some of it comes at a trade-off, like if you want to be gigantic, you're going to have to be uncomfortable at some times. And you might not look like a contest bodybuilder all the time. I remember like Sean Roden got a lot of shit for like showing up to a guest posing like pretty out of shape. And people were like, the fuck's wrong with you? And some like older Masters competitor was like, I could beat him at this stage. Well, you're not Mr. Olympia, are you, motherfucker? And what matters is he gets in shape when he has to. And if he was going to be in shape all year round, I mean, Greg, you and I have been around the block. Can you imagine the pharmacology it would take?
Exactly.
He would just fucking be dead in 2 years. The stupidest shit I ever heard. You got to accept the fact that muscle growth occurs in a slightly fluffier body fat range best than your best stage lean or beach lean body. And if you can make that trade-off and be a little bit fatter, we're not talking about sumo wrestler fat, just a bit fatter, you'll get better training, higher quality sleep, better everything. You get much bigger. And then when you want to get lean, all it takes is 8 to 16 weeks and voila, you're there. But guys try to hold on to that shit all the time. And it's something you can't really have.
I can't help but say, voila. It probably didn't have no idea what we're talking about. Like, voila. There's a controversy going right now with stealing recipes. And they said, voila. My viewers will know right away what that means. But anyway, as soon as I heard voila, I was like, I have to say voila.